And sorry to keep you waiting on me today. Tied up a little bit. Tied my guy up, Aaron Lomax, joining in from Hamilton, Ontario. Legendary industry player. Not, yeah,
I wouldn't go that far.
yeah. Wait until you hear, though, the story. Fascinating background. And that's what the show is all about, ladies and gentlemen. And we've said that more and more through and through. Last week, a little hiccup. My bad again. Sorry, we're going to be bringing last week's guest on a returning episode later down the line. And no harm, no foul. Better late than never. Finally getting myself back to normal here after some music events. And I can, with no further ado, Aaron, I've been on the, Aaron and I have just connected for the last 5-10 minutes, dialing it in from about a month ago from a phone call introduction, building up in response to the Canadian Cannabis Podcast. And I'm telling you right now, I'm fascinated literally just off of the genuine time we've had here and learning a little bit more. I think people need to know more about what you're doing in Ontario, how that affects Canada, the industry, and what it can do for people like myself here in Manitoba, man, making that simple connection, reaching out and pushing that. We're doing the same thing, right? We're pushing the envelope forward, the decolonizing cannabis, breaking down stigmatizations and stereotypes in the industry and moving the platform forward. So with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Lomax, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and again, the fine work you do in the industry, man.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great intro. I currently am a territory manager for Route 1 agency. We represent a few brands in different provinces here in Ontario. Notably, we represent Pool Boy, All Good Collective, Wabi Sabi brands, Vicious Citrus, which is a soon to launch drink. Please, everybody, if you're a retailer, get a case. It's fantastic.
Nice.
But yeah, moved into a territory manager position after being in every single position that you can be in a dispensary, from door greeter, ID checker, all the way to general management and new store opening personnel. So as far as legal cannabis goes, it's a pretty young industry, but I've done most of it on the retail side at this point. And yeah, just kind of moving through the industry, gaining experience with the end goal of opening my own store, getting a CRSA or a cannabis retail allotment. One day, it's a lot of steps and a lot of money, so we'll get there.
Absolutely. And I hear you 100%, man. And again, bringing it back to that genuinity, authenticity, and the connecting. When it comes down to guests on the show, the platform itself, the North American Weed Tour, Respect My Region's push through the global cannabis industry. You're speaking at the same time from a grassroots perspective, the build up. I'm hosting the show. I'm presently a bud tender. I've also created Flourish Ventures Limited, which is now growing into a media cannabis brand promotion platform, obviously working with Respect My Region and hitting the nail on the head, the ultimate goal to build it up to something that it could flourish into becoming what it could be. Whether it was a retailer, for me personally, is growing. What I miss the most right now is growing, man. My medical growing, the ability to connect with the plants, you know what I mean? And how that impacted my business planning from a personal perspective into Pyrigeur, which is a cannabis brand that I've actually created and I want to share with many people. So international markets coming to play is a huge projected portion of that planning. Taking a position as a bud tender, one now, hosting the Canadian Cannabis Podcast, building a platform, connecting with as many professionals across Canada as I can in the meantime. That build up that you've explained, that's where I'm at. I want to hear more of that as well. How important in that play, the patience, the time commitment, your attribution, your contribution to that end goal, and taking all of these roles. And then what people don't know right now is also that you have an American background as well. You're coming from,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So like tap in on that, dial us in a little bit about that move from America to Canada, taking these positions in the industry as they stand, and that build up to what that eventually could be. And maybe at the end, looking at like the importance of collaborations, for example, and how much easier some of these end goals are going to be for us, right? And making these connections and moving it all forward as well. So, you mind elaborating on that a little bit, Aaron?
Yeah. I mean, from coming from the States, I was born in Hamilton, and my parents moved to Phoenix, Arizona when I was very young. So grew up in Arizona and became involved in the legacy market industry as a teenager. And yeah, moving packs, as they say, for years. It did that until my late 20s when I decided to move back to Canada for a number of reasons. I love Ontario every time I visited throughout my life. So I always kind of wanted to move back. And when I did, I kind of just fell right into that legacy market. At the time, Hamilton had something like 82 gray market dispensaries that were operating. So it was known in Ontario as Amsterdam for a long time.
Nice.
So it wasn't too hard to get involved. Just a matter of being places, meeting people, and then kind of became a rep for a few legacy market brands during those days before legalization. And when cannabis legalization was a thing, like I, it was amazing. Just the opportunity to turn that into your day job. Because I've always been in sales, retail, telecom, stuff like that, and at the same time, heavily involved in the counterculture, or what was the counterculture. Now it's more mainstream, but
Yeah.
kind of doing that in the background or behind closed doors, so to speak, and being able to do it out in the open as your taxable day job is a wonderful thing.
The hell yeah,
Um,
man.
so yeah, it took a step back career wise to just get into the industry, and took a job as a bud tender, door greeter, ID check guy. And after working there for a little while, they realized, oh, I know how to work POS systems very well. I'm tech oriented. I'm really good at sales and communication training, things like that. So rapidly was able to progress, and got recruited by another retailer that was rapidly expanding, and moved from a key lead to assistant manager to general manager, uh, all in the span of 24 months. Like, since legalization happened 3 years ago, I've gone from checking IDs at the door to planning a new store opening, like a multi-unit new store opening for the last project I was working with before joining Route One. And yeah, I could have stayed in retail, but I felt like territory manager position for a number of brands on the LP side would allow me to get into more dispensaries
Absolutely.
and see everybody's shop. And there's about 180 stores in my territory right now. So instead of just being in one or two, now I get to see all 180,
Hell
and,
yeah.
and slowly amalgamate that data in my brain for when it's time to open my own store.
It's sick, right? I mean, so a lot of R&D, I guess, realistically, in your own business planning, it right. I mean, and laying the tracks for what you want to accomplish, I guess, is your end goal. Can't really go wrong. I mean, it's the industry, and again, not recreating any kind of wheel, but to have that glimpse in behind the scenes, and then for you to take that approach from step to step to step to step, and then all obviously realizing this is something you want to do. So what would you say for anyone listening right now, coming out of any situation, looking at possibly even a career switch, aside from the territory manager? And I hear you on that, because I look at the job searches, man. I see them every day. I'm also very open-minded. I'm a bit of a free agent myself. So I'm looking at those Monday to Friday gigs in the cannabis industry, and some of those territory manager roles, as well as contract positions that come up and available, right? the experience called upon in that, and hearing your history in the industry, what would you say as far as bud tending goes, and then the approach coming in afterwards? What's been the most crucial position you've had, would you say, as far as moving forward personally and professionally, as far as helping any brand or a store move their company forward as well? Is there a position particular that you find, delivery or anything like that? Like, is it, you know what I mean? Like in the retail, I know you moved beyond there, but something that stands out with you at this point?
Like a crucial role for anybody to have, or
Yeah, man. Like, is there
I
one?
think if anything, I mean, if you're not a huge corporate entity, if you're trying to be the mom and pop cannabis store, don't be a remote operator. Know the positions, be the guy that checks the IDs, be the guy that talks to your customers and figures out how to meet their needs with the cannabis products that are available. There's thousands of them now. Everybody's needs can be met. You just have to be good at fact finding and building rapport and find out what delights your customer. But if you're just leaving that up to somebody that doesn't have as much stake in the game as you, as the business owner, I don't know how you expect to be successful. And it's sad because I've seen a lot of people operate that way, that the business owner of the cannabis dispensary doesn't feel comfortable talking to the public. Like, they don't want to be the guy on the sales floor, or they feel that they're above that. But that's the most important position in the store, is the bud tender. How else are you going to sell weed to your customer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think every position, like if you're trying to be a store owner, you should know how every aspect of that business works. Do the inventory, do the general management, do the bud tending, be the guy mopping the floor at the end of the night. Do everything. That way you know the industry, because if you're in this for the money, it's not a quick get rich scheme. Like selling bud in a legal sense, it's a long play, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you're not passionate about it, just move on. There's only so many licenses for those of us that care.
Perfect timing, man. Like in that response alone, you bring up a couple of cool things regardless. So one, that I work, for example, and I hear you there, mom and pop, small shop. Our ownership is also very well known in Manitoba, in the industry, in other industries, in the restaurant industry, in the night scene, music industry. You know what I mean? They're busy individuals, and what it comes down to is trust. Absolutely. Because while we're positioning ourselves over the course of 3 months being open at Pot Life Cannabis and Vape Shop, I find that role. So a lot of the evenings. So now I'm moving into definitely like regular inventory, keeping an eye. Obviously, I reach out to brands steady. So I mean, trying to introduce the store ownership and some of the things we talked about before going live, Aaron, there, exactly that. Helping build the brand, even though the focus of maintaining that mom and pop approach. So not getting locked in hardcore with some of the top corporate brands, as opposed to the very available local markets, not just Manitoba, but beyond. But I mean, like you know what I mean? Like a nice local quality batch, locally grown, small player kind of, and keeping our doors rolling that way. But to build up everything going through there, and it's taken some time, but absolutely that has happened. So where I've gone as a consumer, as a retail shopper to other stores, recognizing that simple service approach, which you've identified can exist, as opposed to bringing that information to a brand themselves as an employee, and helping them navigate around avoiding those simple things, those simple tactics, and saying maintain small, but let's keep our business flowing. And these are the simple little things that we can possibly do for that. And I mean, that trust component is a huge part of it. When you're a business owner, like you mentioned, that can't commit to it, obviously the ROI, right? Everyone's going to be looking for, there's no fucking doubt about it, man. Everyone's going to be looking for the return on profit. How fast does it come? If you're unfamiliar to the culture and expecting that quick overnight turnaround, you're definitely in for a surprise. And leaving it for the bud tenders though, especially, and getting that backdrop built up in the brand itself is a huge component to that. Building that trust with the store ownership and alleviating that for the management, for the key leads. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, to the 24/7, the bud tender that's there, that's a huge step in where we've positioned ourselves. I see it, but it's also bringing me up to the next point as far as we've talked a little bit before, the general public and their expectations and anticipations of what could be in the store location. So when we're talking about, I think for the most part, almost like a safe house effect seems to kind of go out, man. We have this smoke glass. So I'm going to tell you straight up, man, I'm a bud tender. Last week we had an attempted robbery at our store. Luckily, nobody was injured. You know what I mean? There was some property damage through the event, a very kind of awkward situation. And I'm not saying smoke glass played a part in it, but it happened actually at a time where throughout the entire rest of the weekend, it made national news across Canada, became a highlight of attempted robberies and robberies happening throughout the nation at cannabis stores.
Yeah.
The follow-up to that kind of brought me as well as like where I'm kind of spinning off in this dialogue, and I got fireworks going on with it right now, but that exactly it. So we kind of built up the safe house component. Meanwhile, while this individual was attempting to rob our shop, I mean, we would have been lucky if we had $1,000 of retail product in the place. There's been a disruption in distribution naturally in the province, for one, anybody listening. So, I mean, I'm a consumer. I'm a bud tender, but I hit up other shops. Half the fucking shops in the country right now in Manitoba are half the shops shelves are empty, for one.
In Manitoba too?
Yeah, in Manitoba. So one, if you're rushing, you know what I mean, you bum rush these places and hold these bud tenders up for $500 worth of retail weed. So let's look at the smoke glass. I mean, like, for one, the guy walks in, locks the door immediately. So it's like, what am I to do, right?
Yep.
That's exactly how I get it. Would it have happened if the smoke glass was on or not? I don't know. But at the same time, now I'm starting to think outside the box a little bit about, I mean, public safety, number one. So let's talk a little bit about that as well, because I know Ontario, we might chew up a little bit of extra time. It's all good, Aaron, but still, Alberta, at the same time, the week after, Alberta alleviates smoke glasses from shops entirely now. Ontario, I know there's a brand of Woodstock Cannabis, not to plug anyone particularly in that area. If you know others, definitely we can talk about that, who went off legalization, definitely went with no smoke glass. And then how that's playing out apparently. So I've said it like that. It almost gives this almost gives the safe house appearance effect. Like, and a lot of locations like ours are in old banks as well, man. So I mean, it's like smoke glass in an old bank. Is it a stash? Hell no. Obviously it's not. You know what I mean? If you come in and actually check the place out and realize it's not going to be like that. But let's go into that a little bit. How is that affecting anything that you've done, any of your experiences? Canada looking at, obviously, October is going to be coming around, regulation amendments possibly coming in.
Fingers crossed.
Hopefully, yes. And how is that happening? Do you think smoke glass plays a role in robberies or not? Have you seen that in your neighborhood or anything like that, man?
I would say absolutely. So I did hear a number of stories from different retailers that basically describe the exact same thing that you just described happening in Ontario. Guy walks in, locks the door behind him, out comes the gun. Everybody get against the wall. Give me all the weed. Give me all the money, because he knows that there's nobody passing by that's going to see anything.
Right.
And I mean, you could argue against it, but I would say that if it was like a convenience store where anybody walking by or driving by can see right in the windows, you'd probably be a little more reticent to pull a gun out and start robbing the place, right?
For sure, man.
Yeah, that said, I know, like you mentioned, Woodstock Cannabis, I've heard of them being that very open window concept, just saying like, hey, we're not putting anything on the windows, we'll figure out a way around it, which I've started to see happening a little bit in Southern Ontario. There's a really good store in Hamilton that doesn't have any window coverings. They fog the glass about 3 feet up the window, so it's very open, and passerby's head level walking by can look in and see the store. And the way they've set up the displays, there's no visible cannabis products or accessories from the sidewalk, so they're abiding by all the AGCO regulations, and they're able to operate without any window coverings in the middle of a densely populated, high foot traffic area. So
beautiful. Yeah.
I think that should be the way to go. I feel like Alberta's led the way as far as the provincial middlemen go. They were the first ones to do away with sale to public, where they focus strictly on the wholesale distribution to brick and mortar retailers, which I still don't know how the OCS justifies operating OCS.ca when there's struggling mom and pops trying to stay open in the province that they also wholesale to. But that's a whole nother podcast.
That's the decolonized cannabis.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Alberta's the first guy to say, you know what, the window coverings are kind of stupid. Like it's a weed shop. There's nothing crazy going on. There are people coming in to buy products that they want to buy as adults. It's an age-gated environment. There's a lot of things in other stores that you don't want your kid to see that are readily available for them to look at through a window or in the store. So
alcohol,
I don't see how cannabis is any different.
For sure. And that is like vendors, right? Alcohol vendors, same deal. Tobacco shops, and that we're seeing tobacco shops that have. So we have decades old tobacco shops that are now being approved for cannabis licensing through the CTLS. And they're still the same tobacco shop plus cannabis. You know what I mean? And
in Ontario, I think that's against AGCO regulations. You're not allowed to sell tobacco and cannabis in the same place.
See that, and like you mentioned, Alberta leads the way too. And I find right now in Manitoba, we're in a beautiful position. Like with our licensing at the shop, we sell cannabis and tobacco, right? We also, while we look like our ownership looked at the overall licensing, we kind of really can run like a convenience store, man. So we generally try and plan to keep a short stock of munchies on sale, even, you know?
Yeah. So, have you heard of THC in British Columbia with their Dank Mart concept?
Not overly, no.
Yeah, THC is worth looking up. They're a dispensary that when I was in retail, I stole a lot of ideas from and kind of just said, hey, there's these guys in BC doing really cool things. And they kind of opened a convenience store right next door to the dispensary that sells like hard to get snacks and Chinese Fanta sodas, like random stuff that you're not going to get at a regular convenience store. And it was a huge hit. And
why would
more retailers should look into doing such things?
I think so, man. And that's so like topping it up and keeping momentum flowing. We're looking now, so we bring it right up. Location one obviously fucking matters no matter where and which industry, regardless. But tying it in now with food and also or music, just to kind of close things off as we move towards the end of our discussion here. How is that music scene in Ontario? How's your summer been with music festivals? How's the music festival scene responsive as far as playing into the cannabis industry, cannabis brand promotion, obviously at music or cannabis events upcoming in your area, Hall of Flowers, which definitely enlighten us a little bit about. The food obviously is part of the atmosphere. Here in Manitoba, I've been to a couple of events where, as of lately, cannabis friendly, not quite yet being promoted, but Flourish Ventures Limited entering the stage as an avenue, obviously, where down the line, cannabis-friendly events, we're going to be a player in that and helping promote that, encourage that, friendly, public, safe use. And I've been to a couple events this summer, music festival events, where cannabis was included. It was allowed. Last night included, man. Tweed, I'm not going to plug. I'm not a big player on the big corp, but they actually responded to the event, sent out representatives, and they threw up a pop-up last night and gave out free drinks for half the evening. I mean, so it's happening here in Manitoba. Not quite weed gardens, but you can bring cannabis to some of these events if you're smoking there. And lucky enough, at some of them, mobile dispensary on-site, purchase cannabis at these events. Don't mix it with alcohol, obviously. What's the scene in Ontario? How's that been? Have you been traveling? Have you been taking any other music festivals? Anything else? Your musical own inclinations?
I'm a family guy. I have a small child at home. He's 6. So not going out to music festivals anymore at this point in my life. A little envious. I wish I could, but I think I just don't have the time between jiu-jitsu, work, and family. It's
awesome, man.
The schedule is full. But the events that I did have the time to go to were all cannabis industry events, like Summer Fair. So that was a cannabis industry event. So it was very cannabis friendly. LPs connecting with bud tenders and frontline staff, giving samples out of all the products, and then a huge open area to consume and lounge and talk to LPs and talk to your friends and talk to the territory managers for all the brands. It was a great event. I can't wait to go to the next one. And a similar event that's coming up that the consumption areas are going to be a huge part of is Hall of Flowers.
All right.
We will be there. Route 1, come see me and my boss, Chris Hart. We'll definitely be at the booth. And as well as my counterparts in the Toronto area, Christine and Jackie. Can't wait to see them. Yeah, it's a great event. It's getting put on by heavily with Krista Raymer and the Ventrina Group behind it. They're a great consultancy firm based out of Toronto, doing great things to push cannabis retail in the industry as a whole forward. But Hall of Flowers, if you're not familiar with it, the event in the States, they're bringing it to Toronto, and it's going to be an event to connect the producers of cannabis with the retailers of cannabis in an open and safe space where you guys can get together, talk, share ideas, no middlemen involved, and huge consumption areas to go smoke a joint with your new best friend.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a great time. I can't wait to see what it's like. It's the first event of its kind in Canada, so it'll be a great time.
Hell yeah. And I think it's a great opportunity. It's again, man, the coincidence, the timing alone. I've been pumping it out every now and then to Colin. Much love to Colin at RMR, man. There's a lot of work behind the scenes on the prepping behind the stuff. But I've been approaching RMR on a Canada-US unity. You know what I mean? A unification where we can meet, a collab. They were at Shambhala a few weeks back. I was in Manitoba, southwestern Manitoba, at another music event. And then I was pitching out, let's look at 2023, early New Year, at a Toronto event where we can come together and make it official and obviously line everything up. I'm starting to think Hall of Flowers. We've got a bit of an invite towards the West coming up in the same time frame, November, December, with some great people out in that way in the industry. A guest coming on the show later as well for October 30th. Actually, dial in with this for our October 30th episode, man. It's going to be Halloween themed.
Absolutely.
And again, just bringing it up with that, mentioning music and world cannabis events, but bringing that culture together all in one space. Mary Jane Manor out in Alberta, if you've heard of them or not, I'm not sure. Tourism industry, man, bringing it all together, full component. Right? Like a nice little casual stay, place to book your professional events, cannabis industry geared 100%. So I'm not going to spit too much about it. A lot to learn about them in the meantime. That's one thing. October in Winnipeg, looking at bringing Captain Cannabis, Vern Andrew in from BC, to Winnipeg for Comic-Con. And that I can't wait, man, because he helped me kick everything off originally with the Canadian Cannabis Podcast. But the guy's dialed in, always hitting up events, always hitting up vendors events, right? So, I mean, he's very well known in North America. He's explained that obviously once on a podcast before. And I'd like to spin this all up and possibly connect with you guys down at, obviously, I mean, man, what you're talking now, Hall of Flowers, September. That's enough time to kind of plan it. I think it's enough time to connect with RMR on that. I've watched their feed for 2 years, man, at the Arizona Hall of Flowers. So I can't see them being far off on not wanting to make it possible to connect there, whether it's one of them or any of them, or having me show up at least and repping it all. But I think it's definitely would be worth it. There's a number of people, including yourself, that I'll be discussing with between now and then on the show who are definitely going to be there. And that's just kind of where, so I'm like music events, man. That's, so I, like you said, that's where do we take it out of the box? Every province is obviously a little different. Manitoba, we run on a hybrid model, more focused on the province taxing and basically controlling licensing as opposed to privacy. You know what I mean? Private, small private ownership and such. So there is a saturated market. It's very competitive. Things seem to be lightening up. Obviously, robberies are a real thing. There's also a pile of information that the general public doesn't have a fucking clue about because of strict brand marketing and regulating. And hence the purpose of having a platform like I run, Flourish Ventures Limited, Decolonize Cannabis, getting around the brand marketing, getting the education out, and helping people realize just what you can expect across the nation and beyond, hitting up the legal cannabis industry. So I guess with that, Aaron, like anything else that you want to plug? I know you mentioned, man, that the sun's going down on the east side.
Yeah, it's getting dark. Sorry about the lighting in here.
You're still good, man. You're still looking all right. It's all good, man. You dialed in. No problem there at all. I do get rambling. I'm also hitting this fucking vape here, my man. Grab this one grabber. I'll save this for a review, obviously. I haven't done any research. Royalty. I don't know if that might be from the East Coast or not. This thing whacked people right out last night in front row, all around me. I mean, COVID, I get you, baby, but I'm also that kind of guy when I'm there. I was brought there for a reason, shared it up, and the response to this vape tip in particular was wild. We're talking from 10 different people, the effect it had, from one puff to like, don't fucking give that to me again, to people who are like, damn, right? But if some people found it rank. Anyway, that's what it's about as well. I'm exploring that. That's kind of how the rest of my night is going to go. I've got a pile of content to go through. Rise Against was wild as a motherfucker last night. And I can't wait to hit up more music events as well throughout going into fall, in the winter. I'm working on a project, starting to build it up, pull some ties in. So it might be something you might be interested down the line. Looking at a February music festival that I'd like to coordinate, working with some of the connections I have, looking at also having that being a cannabis sponsored event. And so keep it dialed in the background with that, starting to reach out locally to some of the connections I have in the Manitoba scene that can make that actually happen. And I think it's very doable. So Hall of Flowers is one thing, but kicking it off, baby steps, every fucking step counts, man. And if we can do something here in Manitoba right away, we're going to make that happen as well. So Aaron, we hit a point in the show. Obviously, man, like I said, I'm baked. I ramble. I talk.
No worries. No worries at all.
You are an educated individual. I appreciate your time 100%. I know everybody that's heard anything you've shared today for sure appreciates your time. You've had the introduction with RMR. Please follow up with that yourself, my guy. Take that to whatever level you can. Joey, Mitch, Colin, definitely reach out, take that wherever you can. If you got a chance to meet up with those guys on business, anything like that, it's worth it. I know that 150%. So if you have anything you'd like to plug in now to add to bring us to a close, it's all you. No worries, man.
Check out Route 1 website and Instagram. I'm at route1.aaron, AARON. If you're in the Hamilton, Niagara, Brantford region, you're in my territory, please feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do to help out your store. Shout out to Ventrina Group, Krista Raymer, and Hall of Flowers happening soon in Toronto, September 13th, 14th. And I should be up on the mountain tomorrow, bouncing around to retailers, introducing myself as their new territory manager. So shout out to Greenhouse Hamilton and Blake and Dave, OG Cushman. Those guys that run that store are absolute gems in the community. So shout out to them. Shout out to HB Frank, Hybrid Brands Frank. Shout out to Desiree at MetaFarm Labs. And shout out to Conrad at Village Cannabis. Everybody, we're all friends.
Hell yeah, man. It's the culture, it's the community and family, man. Love my kids, miss my kids every day. And that's where I'm going to be at the rest of my night, man. Content editing. And appreciate this, man. Much love to you as well. Big shout out to everyone pulling everything together. Keep plugging it out. You know what I mean? Keep your grind up. It's worth it. It's worth it. And my man, Aaron Lomax, I'm going to share the shit out of this tonight, man. And we're going to keep you up. Let's connect again. Hopefully I'm going to see you at Hall of Flowers, man. Until
Absolutely.
next time.
Thanks for having me, Jordan.
And grow some, homie.